Do your managers ever remind you of ancient dukes, counts, or popes? They should, well, a bit perhaps. I'm Alistair Pearce from Working with Creatives, the organisation that helps you work with your creative colleagues. This video, produced for HR professionals interested in staff training, argues that the manager of creative colleagues should be a combination of connoisseur, protector, and facilitator of their creativity. What do your creatives need? Well, obviously, they need sufficient resources for the project. That's usually time, money, and support. So, basically the same things that Pope Julius II gave Michelangelo. He commissioned his painting of the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Okay, the scale may be a bit different in your projects, but the same resources, the same kinds of resources that your colleagues need to be at their most creative. That is, time, money, and support. And there's one other thing that Renaissance patrons did that your managers today might note. They tended to keep well out of the creative process itself. After the commission was clearly defined, they stepped back and let their chosen artist get on with it. And today's manager too should not attempt to get into the process itself, perhaps vainly hoping that if they hang around the edge of the action, some creative fairy dust might land on them. The manager, like Pope Julius, should be content with the genuinely heroic skill of facilitating, as a connoisseur, creativity of the greatest depths. In other words, today's manager needs to be, in many respects, a contemporary patron of his or her creative colleagues. But your creatives at work also need something else. They need their manager's protection. Perhaps space might be a better word. That's space away from the bureaucratic procedures, customs, and protocols of normal corporate life. For these are built on conformity and consensus, whilst creatives search for exactly the opposite, for originality and disruption. The effective manager makes this metaphorical and perhaps physical space for creatives, and he or she protects it zealously. So the manager of creatives must ensure space away from office distractions, provide resources, that's usually time, money, and required facilities, and offer, from a respectful distance, genuine encouragement for high-quality work based on his or her connoisseurship of creativity. Okay, your managers may not be kings, queens, princes, dukes, or even modest counts, but by adopting some of these people's traditional ways of facilitating creativity, they too can gain their own form of immortality as a facilitator whose actions, judgment, and trust has been the midwife of creativity. Have you heard of Count Keyserling? No? Don't worry, few have. But, well, in the mid-18th century, Count Keyserling was the Russian ambassador to the Electoral Court of Saxony. But, more importantly for this story, he was a man who really enjoyed music, so much so that he employed his own harpsichordist called Goldberg to play for him. And this was important, for Keyserling suffered from terrible insomnia, so he'd get Goldberg to play for him when he couldn't sleep. But the Count was clearly a noble of musical taste, for he commissioned none other than Johann Sebastian Bach to write a piece that Goldberg could play for him. And voila, the Goldberg Variations, arguably the greatest summary of high Baroque contrapuntal genius. So Count Keyserling won his immortality, even though we've forgotten his name. Okay, it's Bach that gets the creative praise, and it was Goldberg, the performer, whose name is in the headline. But without Count Keyserling's patronage and faith in Bach's creativity, that masterpiece would not be with us today. Perhaps you should send all your managers a download of Count Keyserling's legacy to the world. It might inspire their own work as a patron. And of course, you should come to our website at workingwithcreatives.co.uk to find out how we can help you work with your creative colleagues.